I'm the head of community at Maple. I'm really excited today to talk to Deborah Porter. She's a workplace parent consultant, and she's going to help us go through the balancing act of modern family life and how we can outsource, goal set, and empower our kids to really advocate for themselves. Deborah, hi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey Lauren, how are you?
Really good. How are you guys doing?
Doing good over here. All is well.
Good, good. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Why don't
My
we kick
pleasure.
off and you could start by introducing yourself to those who have maybe not seen you before?
Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So, I'm a workplace parent consultant, and I partner with organizations, businesses, corporations to create workplace cultures that retain and attract who I feel is their most significant talent pool, and that's working parents and caregivers. And so, this conversation is absolutely perfect for that population, especially right now.
Yeah. And if you haven't heard of Maple before, we are the very best way for parents to stay organized. We're a household management app, and we help parents collaborate and really work together to run the household. You know, when you're in the workplace, you have software that helps you project manage and stay on track and collaborate. But when you're in the home, there really is a lack of software to help you keep it all together. And so that's what we do. We're a team of family members and parents, and we're trying to fix sort of the frustrations inside the household around project management and figure out a better way to leverage tech to have those conversations and keep track of everything. We are free, so if you haven't, check us out. Deborah, I'd love to jump in. What does outsourcing inside of a family mean to you?
So, when we think about outsourcing, we know that businesses do this all the time. And we know that one, because they want people to be able to focus on their core competencies. And it's really the same thing in a home. The idea
Mm-hmm.
is, where is your time best spent? Is your time best spent doing laundry 2 or 3 times a day? Is your time best spent going grocery shopping? Is your time best spent on a Saturday or Sunday or whenever cleaning the house? So the idea here is to be able to focus in your core competencies, the things that need you to show up. I like to tell working parents, so when you have a list of things to do, hold up your hands and think about the list of things that have to be done and also the list of things that have to be done at your hand. It shouldn't
Mm,
be the same list. Everything should not
yes.
need you to touch it for it to get done. And so that's where outsourcing and insourcing comes in.
I love that. I think that's a really good point. And I've never thought about it that way of the things that solely I can do and writing out that list versus the list of everything that needs to get done. And that's super, super smart. What a really good sort of tactical piece of advice for parents to really sit down and go, I'm actually not able to remove myself from this list, but I could
Right.
remove myself from that list. And what a great place to start.
Absolutely. Some stuff just needs to be done. Listen, done is good.
Yeah.
And some
Yes.
stuff, what's just the stuff that needs to be done? And it doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't necessarily have to be pretty, but done feels good. And if that can
Yeah.
happen without you having to touch it, that's something you need to think about outsourcing.
Yeah, and I love that you sort of mentioned the whole it doesn't have to be perfect because I think a lot of times as parents, working parents specifically, we feel like things need to be done in a certain way, and so we're hesitant to relinquish control. But if we can do that, I think sometimes you find it's okay if it's not done exactly maybe just the way that you do it. Someone else may have a different approach, but it gets finished, and that's the important part.
That's the
What
huge
are
part.
it's a
Absolutely.
huge it's a huge part. What are some of the necessary components to delegating?
So when we're talking about delegating, the biggest component for delegation is communication. Right?
Mhm.
It needs the particular task, whatever it is, needs to be clearly communicated. And so what does that include? It includes not just the communication, but you got to get the right person for the job, whoever that
That's
is
right.
in your house or in your circle. You also have to set the expectation. right? I don't know how many of the folks listening are familiar with the Fair Play Method by Eve
Mhm.
Rodsky, but there's a piece of that that I love, which is MSC. It is the minimal standard of care. We all have to agree on what a clean bathroom looks like before
Yes.
someone else is taking this over. Because if I have an expectation for a clean bathroom and the
Yes.
15-year-old son that is now taking on that responsibility has a different idea of what a clean bathroom is, there's going to be conflict. So,
Yeah.
what's the expectation? Let's agree on the minimum standard of care. You've got to provide whoever you are delegating to with the things that they need, the resources that they need to get it done,
Mhm.
and with the instruction on how to use those resources. And then you can't hover
Yeah.
and you can't critique and you can't micromanage, right? Feedback is one thing. Hovering and micromanaging how people do things is another. And that is the
Mhm.
quickest way to get people to not want to participate and for people to not want you to delegate anything to them. If you hover, micromanage, critique every piece of it, we have
Yep.
to remember that when we're delegating, there's a learning curve, right? So the
Yes.
more someone does something, the better they get at it. So build that in with your expectation that there's a learning curve for them.
Yeah, and I really like that you mentioned the communication piece, that you have to sit down and communicate on sort of standards and approach and maybe outcome and what you're sort of looking for. I think that's a component that sometimes we miss inside the household, but is really, really important for getting on the same page. My follow-up question to that is, how do you recommend parents who are working together to outsource and get things done? How do they communicate? How do they approach that conversation? What does that communication look like?
So, well, I love maple. So, maple is a great way to be able to communicate some of that stuff. It takes it from being a really serious, we have to sit down and talk about this right now, to communicating within an app that has all kinds of things that are going to help you run your family well.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about beginning to thinking about outsourcing something in the home, it depends on your budget, right? Everybody's
Yeah.
budget is a little bit different. Some of us have more time than money. Some of us have more money than time.
Yes.
And so you
Yes.
really have to figure out what is the resource that you have? Is it time? Is it money? And then based on
Yes.
that, how do I then get help into my house? So one great way to do it is to start out with the task that nobody likes doing. Like
Mm.
for me in my house, that's laundry. Like I
Yes.
I was telling you before we got on here that
Yes.
I contemplated so many times, like, throwing out clothing as opposed to washing it. Like, why do they have this many pairs of jeans? Why? Whose idea was this? Um, and the other thing though is, and this is really important to understand too, our kids can do a whole lot more than we allow
Yes.
them many times. And so by fourth grade, I had decided that I was going to make sure that everyone knew how to work a washing machine. You guys can run these
Yes.
gaming systems, the computer, like how to do everything. And suddenly you walk in a laundry room and you can't, no, we're not going to act like we're incompetent. So
Yeah.
we don't have to assume certain responsibilities that really are part of life skills and things that our
Yes.
kids are going to have to know how to do for themselves. And I know that there are some moms that would tell me, when I've had this conversation with moms that I've worked with, they're like, but I want to. And I'm like, do you really
Mhm.
want to? Are you being led by guilt? Do you feel like because you're away from the home and working that you now have to, in a way to
Yes.
make your presence as a mom known? And there are other ways to do that and still allow our kids to take up these pieces of their life that they really need to understand and know how to manage.
Yeah, I that's such a good point. And for me, inside our household, because we have two parents that work full time, and my husband, I know I was mentioning to you before, he works 60, 70 hours a week. I mean, he is up in the morning around 4:30, on the phone by 5 a.m. So it's really tough for us to sort of delegate inside of the household. But one of the things that we started doing, because my kids are pretty small still at 5 and 7, we
Mhm.
started integrating them into the household tasks. So sometimes it makes the tasks take longer. And yes, it would be easier if I just did it myself, but they miss out on the opportunity of learning, like you said, and also just the joy that can come from doing simple things together. And I don't want to rob them of that experience of, cooking with mom or dad. So I'll have them do things that are age appropriate, like sitting down at the table and peeling kale leaves from the stem, or helping me wash berries or fruit. Setting the table is one that they love to do, and I just let them go crazy and decorate the table however they want, but they love it. So I really like that you mentioned involving the children. Is there a specific age that you sort of recommend beginning at?
Well, I love that you're doing that, first of all, because you're absolutely right. For us, it's like, well, if I sit here and wait and let them do it, this is going to take like
Forever.
15 minutes. I could have this done in 30 seconds. So
That's
it's getting
right.
over that line of thinking and that way of thinking first to
Yes,
realize it's bigger than just me. It's bigger than the 5 minutes or the 15 minutes.
that's
It's
right.
part of them contributing to the family as a whole. We each can contribute
That's
in
right.
a certain way. And so I don't know that there's an age limit. I think you said your kids are how old and they're doing this?
5 and 7. I mean, we have them,
Absolutely.
yeah, we have them do some small chores around the house, like they're picking up their room in the morning and they're
Yep.
responsible for putting their clothes in the hamper. And a lot of times we have to remind them and we'll do walkthroughs together. But really beginning to get them to sort of see with their eyes and get into a
Yes.
habit. And then if they see a parent doing something now, they'll sort of ask, like, hey, can I do that too? And
Yep.
if we don't
It's a
have
lot
time,
easier to do that now than to have a
yes,
13 or 14-year-old that you now suddenly
yes,
decide needs to be helping. Right? If
yeah,
it's been part of what they've been doing all along, and if it's the
yes,
environment that you've created in your house that we're a family, we chip in, we help each other, we do
yeah,
what's needed, we pitch in, we don't wait to if that's the culture in your home
yeah,
from a young age, can a 2-year-old begin to put their toys away according to color
totally.
or according to,
Yeah,
category? Yeah, put all the cars in this basket. Put all the
yes,
yellow blocks in this basket. Put the blue blocks in this basket.
yeah,
When you take off your clothes, here's your hamper. Put it in like it's easier to begin it earlier than later. It's not
hmm,
impossible, but it is easier when this is just part of how your house runs.
yeah. And I also will say, as working parents, we do have a lot of time restraints. And one of the things that we do is if I don't have time in that moment to let my children help with the task because it's going to throw the entire
Yeah.
schedule off. And sometimes you can't do that. Like the bus is
Yeah.
coming at 7:10 in the morning. We got to
Right.
be
We
out the
can't
door by
change that. Yeah,
7:05. Can't
we
change
can't
it.
change it. Right.
That's right. We do intentionally set time aside after, around dinner time or even on the weekends where we can make space for the kids to sort of pitch in and know that we're not going to be getting out the door at 9 a.m. this morning. We may be getting out the door at 9:30, and that's okay. But just being a little
Yeah.
more intentional about it was helpful for us.
It's
I
it's
did want
it's releasing a level of control that
That's
would be
right.
so much easier if we could keep it. It would be so much
That's
easier
right.
to be able to kind of task it all out and make sure that it's happening in a certain way, in a certain time frame, the way that I like it, because
Yes.
my way is always right and they don't know what they're doing. Like it's easy to do that, but it's much more satisfying and it will help long term to be able
Yeah.
to do some of the things that you just talked about.
Yeah, yeah, I love that we're having these conversations. I think it's so nice. And
Mhm.
isn't that the whole part of parenting? I mean, it's just letting go. It's surrendering.
It
That's
is.
parenting.
It is, and then just thinking too about what could it look like to, maybe it's not bringing someone, maybe it's not bringing in a nanny, right? Maybe that's not where you
Mhm.
are resource-wise. What would it look like to have a mom's helper? I remember at
Yeah.
different stages of my kids growing up, I would have, when they were really little, I had the girl next door. She was in high school. It was right before she got her license, so she was
Mhm.
available. But she would come over and just play with the kids for a while to give
Yeah.
me a minute to get dinner going, right?
Yes.
I remember they got a little bit older. I had a college student who was early education major to come help more with homework and maybe even getting them to and from activities. So
Yes.
it doesn't have to be the heavy financial lift that we're thinking all
Yes.
the time either. Who's in your network? Who's at your house of
That's
worship
right.
where you go?
That's
Who's in
right.
your mom group? Who's got a kid that's looking, you got to be able to be a little bit creative when you need help. And remember that your community, your village may not look like your mom's village. You may not live in the
Yeah.
neighborhood where your auntie and your grandma and everybody lives. You got to be a little bit creative when you are then creating your own village if you're not near family, or if family you're near, if they're not available either.
Yeah, I like that you said that because I think a lot of working parents have budget constraints that they're working within. And when we say outsource, their immediate thought is, well, we don't have budget for that. So I think there
Mhm.
are ways, like you said, to get really creative and figure out, okay, is there a carpool setup that we can do for soccer? So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm on, but on Monday and Wednesdays, I'm off.
Right.
And
Right.
can we do things like ask the neighbor, hey, you walk my dog once a week, I'll walk your dog once a week, or move things around in the budget and know that you're going to be paying for support, but maybe it's only for a little while. And
Exactly.
it's like 6 weeks, and that's what you need. You need 6 weeks during the busy season, and whatever that looks like for you. There are ways to get
Absolutely.
creative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the busy season that's always like, okay, we can create the budget for this for the next 2 to 3
Yes.
months, right? We know that we are going in 5 different directions with extracurriculars and everything going on. And then think about, what does it look like? I had a girlfriend, and we literally would keep each other's kids like 1 weekend a month. Her kids would come to my house and stay for the weekend, and
Interesting.
her husband would
Yeah.
have a weekend. And then that next month, all of my kids would go to her house, and my
I
husband and I
love
would have a
that.
weekend, a whole weekend, like not
Yeah.
even a night, a whole weekend.
Yeah.
So just it takes getting creative and talking to the moms in your circle and be like, look, what are you struggling with? How do we manage and get through this together?
Yeah, I love that. We sit down. We have a couple of friends of ours who our kids love each other, and they're in the same grade and the same class. And so we sit down as parents and we try to figure out summer camps together, because summer for
Nice.
childcare is always really tough on working parents. And it is February, like summer is coming. Usually by March, April, camps registration opens. And we will sign up week over week in the same camps as our friends to ensure that we have carpooling over the summer so that we can sort of coordinate. And we do all of it in Maple, because you can work with as many people as you want to in Maple, and we use that as sort of our way of staying organized. But it's just so helpful to really find that community and work together.
Yeah, that's everything. Like
Yeah.
this journey of working, parenting, caregiving, you can't do this alone.
No.
At least not for long. You may be able to do it in, small bites by yourself, but the idea that you have a community and that your kids are going to be happy at camp, you've got
Yeah.
carpool worked out, that's huge.
Huge. One of the things that I wanted to sort of chat with you about, and I want to make sure we get to it before this conversation ends, is how to help our children become independent and advocate for their own needs. Because I think so much of this conversation is around parents outsourcing. And part of that is really figuring out what your needs are and finding someone to help support that. So, how do we begin our kids on this journey of being self advocates?
So I think much of what we've been talking about is also a part of it, right?
Yeah.
Children that are independent know how to care for themselves. They know how to do
Mhm.
the basic skills at their age level for what's needed. But I think when we're talking about self advocates, that we've got to remember that us rushing in to solve every problem that arises for them in
Mm,
the long term does not really produce what we're hoping. And so, what I would love
yeah.
for parents to do when your kid comes home and tells you that that thing happened at school today, or that other kid did that thing again, or that teacher, whatever it is, before you go to fire off that email, just take a deep breath,
Yes.
validate your kids' feelings, right? Let them know that
Yes.
must have been really hard. I'm sorry that happened to you today. But then begin to ask more questions than you give answers, to really find out where they are with it, how much they
Mm,
understand around what happened, and what would they say if they could go back now, and how would they
yes.
handle that? So for me, role playing with my kids was always important. Before I stepped in to
It's a
send
good
an email to
idea.
a teacher, I'm going to role play. Okay. And I would tell them, okay, I'm the teacher. What would you say to me? If you could think about it now that it's over and you're home and you're safe or whatever, what would you
Yes.
say? Well, I would explain to him or her that this hurt my feelings because, or I didn't think this grade was fair because it's kind of a muscle memory. The more they can do that with you,
Mm,
then to go back to school and have that conversation, because that's the next step. That's the encouraging
yes.
piece you want to give them. I think that's a great thing to say. And I think you should talk to your teacher tomorrow. I
I
think you
love
should
that.
walk in the classroom and I think you should ask, you can't just barge in and expect them to be available, but Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, I really would like to talk to you about what happened yesterday. Can I come talk to you in your free period? Right? That
I
was kind
love,
of the intro that we always give our kids. You
yes.
wanna you wanna make sure you're doing at a time that they're available. You can't just assume that now that you want to do it, that they're even free and available to do it. So validate your kids' feelings. Ask more questions than you're giving answers initially to find out really as much as you can about what happened, and then begin to role play with them around what would they say, and then switch roles, right? Because they know the
Yes.
teacher better than you, so you be the kid and let them be the teacher and let them
I
begin
love
to tell
that.
you how they think the teacher will respond, right? It's just making them comfortable with having to have
Mm,
conversations that are difficult, because we know that that's part of life too. This is a
yes.
life skill too. How do you step into a difficult conversation with someone, with a superior, whether it's a supervisor, a teacher, maybe it's a roommate, maybe it's a college professor. It's a skill they're going to have to learn.
Yeah. And you, it sounds like you started that pretty young with your own children.
We did. Yeah, we started
Nice.
this. They were probably second, third, fourth grade. And some kids will take to it right away. Like my daughter was like, "Oh no, I already did
I
that." I
got
was like,
this. Yeah.
"Okay, okay, ma'am, go on and just raise yourself while you're at it."
Yeah.
But the others were a little like, well, I can't do that. I can't say that to the teacher. I can't ask the teacher. Well, why not?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And putting the appropriate respectful handles around what that can look like, it pays dividends once they are high school, college, and beyond.
Yes. I think these are such good pieces of advice, especially for working parents who maybe need to be more and have more intention when they are spending time with their kids, trying to work through these difficult situations. And I think, especially for parents who are working, sometimes you just feel pressure to like get through it and get on to the next thing. So I love this idea of role playing. I've never done that with my kids. I'm definitely going to do that the next time he comes to me. I'm serious. I'm going to try it.
Mhm,
I've never done that before. I think that's really good.
mhm.
With some of your other working parents that are struggling with this balancing act, what what sort of challenges are they having that you're seeing, and what do you recommend? Just sort of top level, trying to think about what maybe we haven't covered today that could be helpful for working parents.
I think you named this conversation appropriately. It's the balancing act, right? It's
Yeah.
it's the work, it's family, it's life. What does all of that look like? How does that all happen at the same time without me feeling like I'm not showing up particularly
Yes.
well to any of it because I'm being pulled in so many different directions, right? So
Yes.
being able to set appropriate boundaries for what that looks like and how much access people have to you in certain moments. I was working with a mom and she was in sales,
Yep.
and she was continually getting text messages from her team lead Sunday
Mm,
afternoons,
that's hard.
and she had a baby, right? She had recently had a
Yeah.
baby, and so we were kind of working through, what do you want to do, right? I'm asking the questions. How do you want to handle it? What do you think? Are you good with this? And she finally said, I can't. I Sunday afternoons is all I have with my family. That's
Yeah.
it. Because Saturday is, the running of the errands, the cleaning the house.
Totally.
Sunday is it. And so she very respectfully sent back a message saying, I'll be online at 7 a.m. tomorrow, which was
Yeah.
Monday. I will provide you all of the information that you need. Sunday afternoon is the only time that I have with my family. So I need to respect that. And I also want to respect your time with your family. So I'll address this first thing Monday morning.
I love
And
that.
then she held her breath. She was like, I don't know what that text is going to mean. And suddenly everybody else on the text thread was like, yep, I agree with Kara. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
right now. I can't do this right
Yes.
now. So being real clear on what your boundaries are and
Yes.
being brave enough to protect them,
Yes.
is probably one of the things that I think, because of these, we're always
Yes.
available and
They're
accessible.
right here all the time,
Like,
right next
right,
to us,
like
right next
all
to us
the
all the
time.
time.
And there are emergencies and stuff comes up and crazy things happen and your attention may be needed.
Yes.
But if it is a regular practice or an expectation that you be available no matter what, like unless you're like a brain surgeon or something, or like
Yeah.
where like
Saving
is
lives
it,
or yes.
yeah, is it really necessary? Do you really have to always be available? How do you set that boundary? And I think the other thing is the support around, right, because our hearts go out to our kids. We don't show up at work and suddenly we're not parents anymore.
Yes.
And so many of us are still looking for that village of support. How do I build it? Who are these people? I saw something on IG once that said, so does this village just show up? Do I call
Yeah, like, where's
them?
my village?
Do I send an email, a smoke signal? Like, where are these people? So,
Oh,
I think the balance between it all, creating some level of boundaries so that people understand how to treat you. You teach people how to treat you. You
yes.
really do, by how you choose to respond. Getting that support. And which is why I'm so thankful that so many organizations and companies now have working parent employee resource groups, so that it's
Yes.
beginning to even create this community at work where people are sharing, oh my gosh, I found a great pediatrician. Oh my gosh, my kids potty train now. I found this little video thing that worked. Like, they're even allowing these kinds of communities to be created at work, so that you don't have
Yes.
to show up at work anymore and act like you don't have a kid, or act like you're not pregnant, or act like, you're not going to get a phone call at some point because your kid, just threw up on somebody, or whatever,
Totally.
the
It just
many different things
happens.
that can happen.
Yes.
It happens.
It
So I'm
happens.
encouraged that there are so many organizations that are now seeing it and are willing to actually do something about it, because we need
Yes.
working parents to work. We need working parents working.
Yeah. Yeah, there has to be support structure there, and that support structure needs to come from all the different facets of your life, and there are a lot of them, and work is part of it. Spend I spend
Absolutely.
more time with my coworkers sometimes than I do with my kids every week. So,
Yep.
yeah, I know. Well, this has been so helpful. I just love so many of your recommendations. I'm definitely going to be implementing some of them. I'm
Oh,
definitely going to try
good.
that role playing. I've never done that with my kiddo, and I think he's turning 8, so I think that's about the right
It's a
time.
good age. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just so appreciate your time, Deborah. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. This has been great. I appreciate you guys. I love what you're doing at Maple. I love the story behind it. You and I have talked before, and so for me, Maple is definitely one of the things I recommend to people. The other thing I would recommend is the fair play method. For anyone that is familiar with Eve Rotsky, there is a
Yes.
documentary. This is a system that helps the chores and responsibilities at home to be more equitable among people that live there. Really good
Yes.
information. And then the final recommendation I would have would be to follow a woman, Mother AI. For those of you that are into
Mm.
Chat GPT and others, she is really great. Stephanie is her name. And what she's doing really is creating and giving working parents prompts to help them with things like finding a summer camp, or creating a morning
Interesting.
routine schedule for your kid. You can put in your kid's age and what their responsibilities are, what their level is, what they can and can't do. But she's really been fantastic in helping a lot of mothers use,
Cool.
technology to really
Love
help us
that.
with some of the things that's taken up a lot of our time to create.
That's amazing. I'm gonna have to check that out and see if there's some way to partner together. Love that. Thank you, Deborah.
Mhm.
And thank you,
Absolutely.
everybody who's watching. Have a wonderful day. Happy Thursday.
Bye, everyone.